Millionaire CEO offered a poor girl a place to stay, not knowing she would help him reclaim his lost fortune. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Ryan Parker had been at the top of the world just a few months ago. As the CEO of one of the most successful tech companies, he had it all: wealth, power, and influence. But that all came crashing down when a series of unfortunate events left him penniless, the victim of a ruthless legal battle that stripped him of everything he had worked for. Now, living in a rundown part of the city, Ryan had no choice but to blend in with the world he had once looked down upon. He had no family to turn to, no close friends left to help him. He was truly alone. On one particularly cold evening, with the rain pouring down in sheets and his jacket doing little to shield him from the chill, Ryan wandered the streets, aimlessly searching for some place to stay for the night. His phone was dead, and he hadn't seen a decent hotel in hours. As he walked past a small, humble apartment building, he noticed a young woman standing outside, shivering in the cold. She was holding a suitcase, her expression weary as she looked at the building's entrance. Ryan hesitated for a moment before walking over to her. "Excuse me," he said softly. "Are you okay?" The woman turned to him, her eyes wide with surprise, as if she hadn't expected anyone to speak to her. I'm just waiting for a place to stay for the night. I was hoping to rent a room here, but it looks like they're full." Ryan felt a pang of sympathy. He had been in her position before, desperate, cold, and alone. He couldn't just walk away. "I don't have much either," he said, "but I was looking for a place to stay well, maybe we could find something nearby." She blinked, clearly taken aback by his offer. You're not trying to take advantage of me, are you?" she asked, her voice laced with suspicion. Ryan smiled faintly. "I understand your concern, but I assure you, I'm in no position to take advantage of anyone right now." He pulled out his wallet and showed her the meager amount of cash he had left, just enough to cover a night in a modest room. "I'll pay for the place. It's the least I can do. I'm Ryan, by the way." "Emily," she replied, still uncertain but clearly desperate. "Thanks. I don't know what to say." Ryan shrugged. "No need to say anything. Let's just get through the night." As they walked toward a nearby guest house, the rain continued to pour, but for the first time in what felt like weeks, Ryan felt a small spark of hope. Little did he know, this simple act of kindness would change the course of his life. Emily was just a young woman with a hard life of her own, struggling to make ends meet. But her presence sparked something in Ryan he hadn't felt in a long time. And neither of them could have predicted how much they would end up helping each other in ways they never expected. The night passed quietly, with the sound of rain tapping gently against the window. Emily had settled into the modest room that Ryan had helped her secure, but the events of the evening kept replaying in her mind. She couldn't believe how quickly things had shifted. One moment, she was standing outside in the cold, alone and struggling, and the next, a stranger had offered to help her without asking for anything in return. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what had driven him to do it. She had always been cautious, but something about Ryan's kindness felt different, genuine. The next morning, the city still gray and damp from the rain, Emily woke early. The bed felt too big for her, and the room too quiet. She couldn't remember the last time she had slept in a place that felt even remotely comfortable. She went to the small bathroom, washed her face, and brushed her hair. It wasn't much, but it was something. As she gathered her things to leave, she heard a knock at the door. Ryan's voice, soft but clear, called out, "Hey, you awake?" Emily opened the door to find him standing there, his hands in his pockets, his face less guarded than she had seen it before. "I thought I'd offer you breakfast," he said. "I know a little diner just down the street, if you're up for it." She hesitated for a moment. It felt strange to accept more from him. After all, he had already helped her more than anyone had in a long time. But something about his offer felt different. "That sounds nice," she said, stepping out into the hallway. As they walked to the diner, the chilly morning air felt less biting with each step. They passed quiet streets and empty shops, the city slowly coming to life. At the diner, they sat at a small booth by the window. Emily ordered a simple breakfast, eggs and toast, and Ryan had coffee. They sat in comfortable silence for a few moments, the clink of cups and the hum of conversation around them. Ryan was the first to break the silence. "So, what's your story?" he asked, his voice low, yet kind. Emily wasn't used to talking about herself, especially not with someone she had just met. But there was something in his eyes that made her feel like she could trust him. "I grew up in a small town," she began, her words hesitant at first. "Things weren't easy. I've been working 2 jobs just to make ends meet. I had big dreams, but life, it just kinda got in the way." Ryan nodded, his gaze soft but thoughtful. "I get that. Life has a way of throwing curveballs at you." They talked more, their conversation shifting from their past to the present. Emily felt an odd sense of relief as she spoke, the weight of her struggles lifting slightly with each word. It was the first time in a long while she had felt truly heard. As they finished their meal, Ryan looked at her with a serious expression. "I want to help you, Emily," he said quietly. "I know you're struggling, and I'm not going to pretend that I understand everything you're going through. But I can offer you something, a chance to start over. A place to stay, a job, whatever you need. I don't expect anything in return. I want to see you succeed." Emily stared at him, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ryan smiled faintly, a soft, almost sad smile. "Because I've been where you are," he said. "I know what it's like to feel like everything is falling apart. And I know that sometimes, all it takes is a little kindness to turn things around." Emily felt a lump form in her throat. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she had a chance. A real chance. She couldn't explain why, but Ryan's offer felt genuine, and the more she thought about it, the more she realized that she didn't have to face this on her own anymore. She took a deep breath, meeting his gaze. "Okay," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. "I'll take that chance." Emily spent the next few days settling into her new life. Ryan had arranged a small apartment for her, just a short walk from his office. It wasn't much, but it was more than she had ever expected. The apartment was modest, but clean, with a small kitchen and a cozy living space. She found herself waking up every morning with a sense of calm she hadn't felt in years. She wasn't sure how to explain it, but something about this new chapter gave her a sense of hope she hadn't realized she had been missing. As the days went by, she began working at the community center Ryan had connected her with. The work wasn't glamorous, but it was meaningful. She helped organize programs for underprivileged children and assisted with food drives. She found herself growing attached to the people she met there, especially the children who looked up to her. For the first time in a long time, Emily felt like she was part of something important. Ryan visited her at the center a few times, checking in and offering words of encouragement. They spoke often, sometimes just about the small things in life, and sometimes about the challenges they both faced. The connection between them was undeniable, though neither of them acknowledged it out loud. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that Ryan was more than just her benefactor. There was something in the way he looked at her, something more than kindness. He had a vulnerability to him that she hadn't expected. He would often talk about his past, how he had worked his way to the top, and how losing everything had changed his perspective on life. He never went into details about his downfall, but Emily could see that it weighed heavily on him. He was no longer the confident, powerful man he once was. He was someone searching for redemption. One afternoon, as they sat in a small cafe near the center, Ryan seemed quieter than usual. Emily noticed the frown on his face, the way his fingers tapped nervously against his coffee cup. "What's on your mind?" she asked, her voice soft. Ryan looked up at her, a faint smile tugging at his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I've been thinking a lot about everything," he said slowly. "About how I ended up here, how I lost everything." Emily nodded, understanding more than he realized. "You've been through a lot," she said. "But you're still here. And you're helping others." Ryan's gaze softened. "I know. I want to make things right again. I want to build something that matters." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Emily felt her heart stir, but she didn't know why. Maybe it was because she saw something in Ryan she hadn't noticed before. Not just the man who had helped her, but someone who had lost everything and was willing to fight to get it all back. She admired that. "You will," she said quietly. "You already are." It was then that Ryan looked at her with a different kind of intensity, a quiet understanding that passed between them. He didn't say anything more, but Emily could feel the weight of what he had said and the way it lingered in the air. She wasn't sure where this connection was leading, but for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid to find out. The days that followed felt like a dream to Emily. She had never imagined that her life could change so suddenly, that a stranger's kindness could lead her to a completely new world. The community center work was fulfilling, but something else had been growing between her and Ryan. There were quiet moments, glances exchanged when no one was looking, and long conversations that often went late into the night. They shared stories about their pasts, their struggles, and the things they wished they could have done differently. Emily found herself drawn to Ryan, not just because of the kindness he had shown her, but because of the raw, vulnerable person he had become. Ryan, too, had started to open up more. He began to share parts of himself that were buried deep, his regrets, his feelings of loss, and his desire to rebuild his life. But there was one thing he had never spoken about, something he kept hidden behind his guarded expression. Emily had a feeling that it had to do with his fall from the top, but she didn't press him. She wasn't sure if he was ready to talk about it yet. One evening, after a long day of work, Ryan asked her to meet him at a small park near the community center. It was a quiet place, one that Emily had passed by several times but never really stopped to explore. When she arrived, Ryan was sitting on a bench, his head tilted back as he looked up at the stars. The sky was clear, and the night air was cool, but not too cold. He looked over at her as she approached and smiled. "You're on time," he said, standing up to greet her. "I'm impressed." Emily smiled back, feeling the usual flutter in her chest. "I don't like to keep people waiting," she replied, sitting beside him on the bench. They sat in silence for a while, just watching the stars. It was strange how peaceful it felt, being there with him. "I wanted to talk to you about something," Ryan said after a few moments. Emily turned to look at him, her heart beating faster. "What's on your mind?" "I've been thinking about everything that's happened," he said, his voice low. "And I realized something. I'm not the same person I was before. I've spent so much time focused on money, on success, that I forgot what really mattered. I forgot what it meant to care about people." Emily listened intently, her gaze steady on his face. She had always known there was more to him than just the CEO persona. "You're not alone in that," she said softly. "I think we all forget what's important sometimes. But that doesn't mean it's too late to change." Ryan looked at her, his eyes searching her face, as if looking for something. "You've helped me more than you know," he said quietly. "You gave me something I didn't even realize I was missing, hope. A reason to keep going." Emily felt her heart swell with emotion at his words. "I'm just doing what anyone would do," she said, trying to downplay it. But inside, she felt a deep warmth spread through her. "No, Emily, you've done more than anyone else. You've made me believe that I can fix things, that I can start over." She didn't know how to respond to that, so she just stayed silent, letting the moment linger. Ryan's hand brushed against hers, and for a moment, neither of them moved. It was a small gesture, but it meant more than words could say. As the evening grew darker, they sat there together, watching the stars and talking about everything and nothing. Emily felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years, and it was all because of Ryan. She didn't know where their connection would lead, but for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid to find out. The following weeks brought subtle changes to both Emily and Ryan. Emily had become more comfortable in her new role at the community center, and with each passing day, she felt like she was truly making a difference. The children she worked with began to trust her, and seeing their smiles became the highlight of her day. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Ryan, too, had been transforming, though in quieter ways. He spent more time at the center, offering his support for the programs Emily was running, and he even started to take more interest in the things that truly mattered to him, things that had nothing to do with his previous life of wealth and status. One afternoon, Ryan invited Emily to join him for a walk in the park near his office. It was one of those perfect spring days, the air crisp but not too cold, the sun just beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows over the path. Emily, always careful not to get too comfortable, hesitated at first, but something about the peacefulness of the moment made her agree. They walked in silence for a while, the only sounds being the crunch of leaves underfoot and the occasional bird call from a nearby tree. It felt natural, easy. After a few moments, Ryan spoke. "You know, I've been thinking a lot about what you said the other day," he said, glancing over at her. about how we all forget what really matters sometimes. Emily looked at him, her curiosity piqued. Yeah, he said, a hint of a smile tugging at his lips. I think you're right. For so long, I was focused on the wrong things. Money, success, all the things that seemed so important at the time. But I was losing sight of what I really wanted, what I really needed. Emily nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. It's easy to get caught up in it all, but it's never too late to make a change. Ryan stopped walking and turned to face her. I don't think I've ever really thanked you for everything, he said, his voice quieter now. For believing in me, for showing me that there's more to life than just work and numbers. Emily's heart skipped a beat at his words. I didn't do anything special, she said, her voice soft. I just saw someone who needed help, and I did what anyone would do. Ryan shook his head, his expression serious. No, Emily, you did more than that. You showed me that kindness, that genuine care for others, is the most important thing. And that's something I didn't know I was missing until you came into my life. Emily felt her breath catch in her throat. She wasn't sure how to respond, but before she could say anything, Ryan continued. I want to help you. I want to make sure you have everything you need to follow your dreams. You've helped me rediscover mine, and now I want to help you with yours. Emily stood still, taken aback by his words. She had always been independent, always had to fight for everything she had, and now, this offer from Ryan felt like something she had never expected. Ryan, you've already done so much for me. No, he interrupted gently. You deserve more than just what I've given you. You deserve to follow your dreams without having to worry about anything else. I want to be the person who helps make that happen. His sincerity was clear, and for the first time in a long time, Emily felt like she could truly trust someone. She didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, standing in the park with Ryan, she knew one thing for sure. Things were changing, and they were changing for the better. The following weeks seemed to move in a blur for Emily. She was adjusting to her new life, with Ryan's help, but there were still moments of uncertainty that crept in. She had never imagined that a simple act of kindness would lead her here, to a place where she was able to work for something she believed in and feel like she was making a real difference. Still, there were challenges. The people at the community center were supportive, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling that she still didn't quite belong. She was always careful about how much she let herself trust others, having been let down so many times before. Ryan, however, continued to be a constant source of support. He checked in with her regularly, offering words of encouragement and sometimes even joining her at the center to help out. His presence gave her a sense of security she had never had before. One evening, as they walked out of the center together, Ryan turned to her with a serious look on his face. I need to talk to you about something, he said, his tone more somber than usual. Emily felt a knot form in her stomach. She had never seen Ryan like this before. What's going on? She asked, her voice tentative. I've been thinking a lot about the company, Ryan began, glancing away for a moment. About everything that happened, and about what I want to do next. I'm ready to get back in the game. Emily raised an eyebrow, confused. But you said you wanted to build something new, something that actually matters, she reminded him. Ryan nodded, a faint smile on his lips. I do, and I'm going to, but it's going to take time. And I can't do it alone. I need your help. Emily blinked, caught off guard. My help? Ryan nodded. I know it's a lot to ask, but you've shown me what real purpose looks like. I can't ignore that. I want to build a foundation that actually makes a difference, something that gives back to the community, something that lasts. I want you to be a part of it. Emily felt her heart race. She had always dreamed of doing something meaningful, but she hadn't expected it to come from Ryan, of all people. Are you sure about this? She asked, her voice a mix of excitement and doubt. Yes, Ryan said firmly, his gaze locking with hers. I'm more sure about this than anything I've ever done. They stood there for a moment, the weight of his words sinking in. Emily had always been independent, always relied on herself, but something about Ryan's offer felt different. She had never had someone believe in her the way he did, and she realized that she couldn't ignore this opportunity. Okay, she said finally, her voice steady. I'll help you, but I want to make sure we do this the right way, with real integrity. Ryan smiled, his expression full of gratitude. I wouldn't have it any other way. The next few weeks were filled with planning and brainstorming, as they laid the groundwork for the foundation. Emily worked alongside Ryan to develop ideas, make connections, and build a strategy that would ensure their mission was a success. The more time they spent together, the stronger their bond grew. Emily had never imagined that she would find herself working alongside someone like Ryan, someone who truly cared about the greater good. As they worked late into the night, Ryan looked over at Emily, his expression thoughtful. "You've really changed the way I think about everything," he said quietly. "I'm not the same person I was before. And that's because of you." Emily smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "We're in this together," she replied softly. "We're going to make something amazing happen." As they sat there, side by side, working on their plans for the future, Emily couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning. She wasn't sure where this journey would take them, but for the first time in her life, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. The days that followed were filled with new challenges and moments of unexpected growth. Emily and Ryan worked tirelessly to bring their vision for the foundation to life. They spent hours in meetings, talking about how they could help the community, how they could give back in ways that truly made a difference. It was hard work, but for the first time in a long time, Emily felt like she was doing something meaningful. She felt like she was part of something bigger than herself. But as they worked, something else was beginning to grow between them, something that neither of them had anticipated. There were moments when their eyes would meet across the room, brief but intense, and Emily would feel her heart skip a beat. She tried to push it aside, tried to focus on the task at hand, but it was impossible to ignore. She wasn't the only one feeling it. Ryan, too, seemed to be struggling with the same emotions. He was always professional, always focused on the work, but Emily could see the way he looked at her sometimes, the way his gaze lingered just a little too long. They never spoke about it, never acknowledged the tension that hung between them, but it was there. One evening, after a particularly long day of brainstorming ideas for the foundation, Emily found herself sitting in Ryan's office, exhausted but content. They had just finalized the plans for the next fundraising event, and Ryan had asked her to stay for a quick chat. "I wanted to thank you again for everything," Ryan said, his voice soft as he leaned back in his chair. "You've really made this all happen. I don't think I could have done it without you." Emily smiled, a bit embarrassed by the praise. "It's a team effort," she replied. "We're in this together." Ryan nodded, his eyes not leaving hers. There was a moment of silence between them, an unspoken understanding. Emily could feel the weight of the moment, could feel the connection between them growing stronger with each passing day. But she wasn't sure how to navigate it. She had spent so much of her life protecting herself, building walls around her heart, that the idea of letting someone in, even someone like Ryan, felt both exciting and terrifying. Ryan seemed to sense her hesitation. He stood up from his desk and walked over to where she was sitting. "I know this is all moving fast," he said quietly, "but I need you to know that I trust you. Not just with this work, but with everything. You've made me believe in things I thought I'd lost." Emily looked up at him, her heart racing. She had never heard him speak like that before. "Ryan," she started, but before she could say anything else, Ryan reached out and gently took her hand in his. His touch was warm, grounding, and for a moment, Emily felt like everything else in the world had faded away. "I don't expect anything from you," he said softly, "but I need you to know how much you mean to me, how much your belief in me has meant. It's not just the work, Emily. It's you." His words hung in the air between them, and Emily's breath caught in her throat. She wasn't sure what to say, but she knew, in that moment, that things between them had changed. The lines between professional and personal had blurred, and for the first time, she wasn't afraid of where this might go. She squeezed his hand, a small but meaningful gesture, and for the first time, she allowed herself to believe in something more than just the work they were doing together. She allowed herself to believe in the possibility of them. Emily walked through the community center's hallway, her mind buzzing with thoughts of the past few days. She couldn't quite shake the feeling that things were changing, not just with the work they were doing, but with Ryan. Their connection had deepened, and every time she saw him, she felt a strange pull, something that made her heart race, but also filled her with a sense of uncertainty. She had never been good at navigating feelings like this, especially with someone like Ryan. She had seen how quickly life could change, and she wasn't sure she was ready to let someone in again. But then again, she wasn't sure she could walk away. It was one of those quiet mornings when the sun streamed through the windows of the center, casting soft beams across the wooden floors. Emily took a deep breath and turned the corner, only to find Ryan standing there, waiting for her. He was leaning against the wall, his arms crossed, his expression more serious than usual. "Hey," she greeted him, forcing a smile. Ryan pushed off the wall and stepped toward her. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low. "About what?" Emily asked, her stomach tightening. She had grown used to working with him, to being around him, but the tension between them lately had started to feel more intense. Ryan looked at her for a long moment, his gaze unreadable. "I've been thinking," he began, his voice soft but firm. "About everything we've been working on, about everything we've talked about." Emily's heart beat faster. She had no idea where this conversation was going, but she could tell it wasn't just about the foundation. "I'm listening," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan exhaled slowly, taking a step closer. "I think we both know that things have changed between us. The work we're doing is important, but we're more than just colleagues now." Emily felt her breath catch in her throat. "Ryan, she started, but he raised his hand to stop her. "Let me finish," he said, his voice gentle but insistent. "I've been thinking about this a lot. About us. And I know it's complicated, but I can't ignore how I feel." Emily's mind was racing. She knew where this conversation was headed, but hearing it out loud was different. "You're talking about," she trailed off, unsure if she wanted to hear the rest. Ryan nodded. "Yes, I think I'm falling for you, Emily." The words hung between them, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Emily felt a rush of emotions, a mix of relief, confusion, and fear. She had known something like this was coming, but hearing it made it feel all the more real. She looked up at him, her eyes searching his face. "I don't know what to say," she admitted. "I've never been good at this. At letting someone in." Ryan reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You don't have to say anything right now. I just wanted you to know how I feel." Emily stood there, looking at him, the weight of his words sinking in. For so long, she had kept her heart guarded, afraid to trust again, but now, in this moment, she felt something stir inside her. Something she hadn't felt in years. She wasn't sure where this was all going, but she knew that she couldn't keep running from it. "I'm not sure I'm ready," she said softly, her voice shaking slightly. "But I'm willing to try. Maybe we can take things slow." Ryan smiled, his eyes warm. "I can live with that," he said. "We'll take it one step at a time." As they stood there, together, Emily felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she was willing to face it, with Ryan by her side. The weeks that followed brought a new level of intensity to both Emily and Ryan. Their partnership in the foundation grew stronger, and with each passing day, the sense of unity between them deepened. The work was challenging, yet deeply rewarding. They had built something meaningful together, but the personal connection between them had not gone unnoticed. Every moment they shared, every quiet conversation or laugh exchanged, seemed to draw them closer. Emily felt conflicted, though. She had opened her heart in ways she had never expected, but the more she allowed herself to trust Ryan, the more she felt the weight of their evolving relationship. She had spent so long protecting herself from getting hurt that letting someone in, especially someone like Ryan, felt terrifying. She hadn't expected this feeling of connection, this pull that kept drawing her toward him. Ryan, too, had begun to recognize the shift between them. There were moments when his gaze lingered a little longer than it should have, moments when Emily could sense his feelings for her even though he didn't say them aloud. The air between them felt charged, filled with unspoken words and unacknowledged desires. But they both continued to focus on the work, unwilling to let their personal feelings interfere with what they had already built. That is, until one fateful afternoon, when everything changed. Emily had been working late at the community center, going over plans for an upcoming charity event. She had stayed longer than she intended, lost in the details of the event, when Ryan walked in, his face tense. "Hey, Emily," he said softly, stepping into the room. She looked up, surprised to see him. "Ryan, what's going on?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he closed the door behind him and walked toward her, his steps deliberate. Emily's heart began to race, unsure of what was happening. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you," Ryan said, his voice low. "I've been thinking about this for a while now, and I can't keep ignoring it." Emily stood up from her chair, her hands instinctively gripping the edge of the desk. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan paused for a moment as though gathering the courage to say what he needed to. "Emily, I care about you," he said finally, his words coming out with an intensity that left her breathless. "I know this might be sudden, and I don't want to complicate things, but I can't hide how I feel anymore. I've tried to keep things professional, but it's impossible. I'm falling for you." Emily's heart skipped a beat. She had known something was building between them, but hearing it out loud was different. The truth hit her like a wave, and for a moment, she couldn't speak. She looked at Ryan, searching his eyes for any hint of doubt, but there was none. He was being completely honest, vulnerable in a way she had never seen before. "Ryan, she started, her mind racing. She didn't know how to respond, didn't know if she was ready to open herself up like that again. But before she could finish her sentence, Ryan took a step closer to her. He reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "You don't have to say anything right now," he said softly, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "I just wanted you to know how I feel. No matter what you decide, I just needed to tell you." Emily stood there, her heart pounding in her chest. She hadn't expected this moment to come, but now that it had, she realized that she couldn't ignore the feelings she had for him. She had already started to fall for him, too. Slowly, she nodded, her voice barely audible. "I care about you, too, Ryan. I'm just scared. I don't want to mess this up." Ryan smiled, his grip on her hand tightening slightly. "We'll figure it out together," he said quietly, his eyes filled with warmth and understanding. In that moment, Emily knew that no matter what happened next, she wasn't alone anymore. They had come this far, and they were about to take the next step, together. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of emotions for Emily. She and Ryan had crossed a line, admitting their feelings for each other, but the uncertainty of what that meant for their partnership lingered in the air. They continued to work on the foundation, their professional bond as strong as ever, but now there was a new layer to their connection, one that neither of them could ignore. Emily spent late nights at the center, poring over plans for their next big event, her mind often drifting back to Ryan. She would catch herself smiling at the thought of him, at the way his eyes softened when he spoke to her, at the way his touch felt so natural. But there was still a hesitation within her, a fear that she wasn't ready to dive fully into something so deep, especially with so much at stake. One evening, after another long day of meetings and planning, Ryan invited her to a quiet dinner at a local restaurant. It wasn't a fancy place, just a cozy corner spot with dim lighting and a warm, welcoming atmosphere. They sat across from each other, the menu between them, but neither of them really focused on the food. "How are you doing?" Ryan asked, his voice gentle. Emily looked up, meeting his gaze. "I'm okay," she said, though she wasn't sure if that was entirely true. "It's just a lot, you know? The foundation, the work, us. I just want to make sure I'm not rushing into anything." Ryan nodded, understanding the weight behind her words. "I get it," he said quietly. "I don't want to rush you either. But I also don't want to hide how I feel. I care about you, Emily, more than I thought was possible." Emily felt a lump form in her throat, the sincerity in his words stirring something deep inside her. "I care about you, too," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "But I'm scared. I've never been this vulnerable with anyone before." Ryan reached across the table, gently taking her hand in his. "I know, and I'm not going anywhere. We'll take this at whatever pace feels right for you." His words settled in her chest like a weight lifting. She had been afraid for so long, afraid of getting hurt again, but in that moment, with Ryan's hand in hers, she felt a sense of calm that she hadn't felt in a long time. "I'm just afraid of what happens if this all goes wrong," Emily admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan squeezed her hand. "I can't promise everything will be perfect, but I can promise that I'll be here, and we'll face whatever comes together." Emily looked into his eyes, seeing the truth in them. She had been afraid for so long, but maybe, just maybe, it was time to let go of that fear. They didn't need all the answers right now. They just needed to take the next step, together. "Okay," she said softly, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Let's do this, together." That night, as they walked back to their cars, Emily felt a sense of peace that had been missing from her life for so long. She didn't know where this path would lead, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid to find out. She and Ryan had built something real, something meaningful, and maybe that was all they needed to face whatever the future held. The weeks seemed to pass by in a whirlwind, filled with late nights at the community center, planning for their foundation's upcoming projects. Emily and Ryan were getting closer, their professional lives intertwined more deeply than ever, but there was still a sense of hesitation between them. They were both trying to navigate the fine line between their personal feelings and their commitment to the work they had started together. One evening, as they worked late into the night, Emily noticed Ryan had been quieter than usual. He was hunched over the desk, his eyes scanning a pile of paperwork, but there was a visible tension in his posture. Emily stood up from her desk and walked over to him, concerned. "Ryan, is everything okay?" she asked softly. He looked up, startled, but quickly flashed her a tired smile. "Yeah, just thinking about a few things," he replied, rubbing his eyes. Emily wasn't convinced. She had come to know him better than that. "Ryan, you've been working yourself to the bone lately. Maybe you need a break." Ryan sighed and leaned back in his chair. "I know. It's just, this foundation, everything we've worked for, I don't want to let anyone down. And sometimes, I feel like I'm not doing enough." Emily pulled up a chair next to him and sat down. "You're doing more than enough. Look at everything we've accomplished already. We're making a real impact." Ryan gave her a half smile, but didn't say anything. He seemed lost in his thoughts, his eyes distant. "It's not just about the work, though," he said quietly. "It's about everything that's been happening between us." Emily's heart skipped a beat. She had known this conversation was inevitable, but it still caught her off guard. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan hesitated for a moment, clearly unsure of how to continue. "I know we've been focused on the foundation, but there's something else here. Something I can't ignore anymore. Emily, I care about you. More than just as a partner in this project. And I think you feel the same way." Emily's breath caught in her throat. She had tried to push these feelings aside, to focus solely on the work, but she couldn't deny the truth anymore. "I do," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "I care about you too, Ryan. I'm just scared. I don't want to mess this up." Ryan reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "You won't mess this up, Emily. I'm not asking for everything right now. I just want you to know that I'm here. And I want to be with you, not just for the work, but for us." Emily looked at him, the weight of his words settling over her. She had never been one to let her guard down easily, but with Ryan, it felt different. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she could truly let herself believe in something more. She squeezed his hand gently. "I'm scared too," she confessed, her voice trembling. "But maybe it's time to stop being scared." Ryan smiled, his eyes soft with affection. "We'll take it one step at a time," he said, his voice reassuring. Emily nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of the future. She didn't know exactly where this path would lead, but she knew that as long as they were together, they could face whatever came their way. They didn't need all the answers, not yet. All they needed was to trust each other. And that, Emily realized, was enough. The days that followed felt like a blur to Emily. She and Ryan had finally acknowledged the feelings that had been growing between them, and despite the uncertainties, they were moving forward. Their work at the foundation continued to thrive, but their personal lives were beginning to take a more prominent place in their hearts. They spent more time together outside of work, taking walks through the city, having dinner at small cafes, and sharing moments of laughter that made Emily feel like she was finally living a life she had only dreamed about. But there was still the matter of how to navigate this relationship, especially with the responsibility of the foundation and all the pressures that came with it. One evening, after a particularly long day of meetings, Ryan and Emily found themselves sitting together on the rooftop of his apartment building. The city stretched out before them, the lights twinkling in the distance. It was one of those rare nights where the city felt still, as though everything was holding its breath. Ryan turned to Emily, his expression more serious than usual. "There's something I need to talk to you about," he said, his voice low. Emily looked over at him, her heart skipping a beat. She had learned to read the subtle shifts in Ryan's mood, and she knew that whatever he was about to say, it was important. "What is it?" she asked, her voice soft. "I've been thinking a lot about us," Ryan began, looking out at the city. "About the foundation, about everything we've been through together. I know things have changed, but I'm not sure if we're really ready to take the next step. Not in the way I want." Emily's heart sank slightly, unsure of where this conversation was heading. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan turned to face her, his gaze earnest. "I want to build something with you, something that's not just about work. I want to build a life with you. But before we can really take that step, I think we need to figure out what this is between us. I don't want us to just be rushing into something because of the pressure. I want us to take the time to really understand each other, to really know what we're doing." Emily felt a weight settle in her chest as she processed his words. She had known that there was always more to their connection than just professional partnership, but hearing Ryan voice it made her realize that, yes, they needed time. Time to figure out what they really meant to each other, beyond all the work and the progress they had made together. "I understand," Emily said, her voice steady. "I've been thinking the same thing. I don't want to rush either. I care about you, Ryan. And I want to take things slow, so we can figure out what's best for both of us." Ryan smiled, a hint of relief in his eyes. "I'm glad you feel the same way. I don't want to lose what we have, but I also want to make sure we're building something real, something that lasts." Emily nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude for his honesty. In that moment, she knew that they were both on the same page. They didn't need to have all the answers right away. They just needed to trust each other and take things one step at a time. As the night stretched on, they sat together, talking about their hopes for the future, about the foundation, and about the life they wanted to create. There were still so many unknowns, but for the first time in a long time, Emily felt truly at peace. She was ready to take the next step, with Ryan by her side, knowing that whatever happened, they would face it together. The days turned into weeks, and Emily and Ryan found themselves living a life they never could have imagined just a few months ago. The foundation was thriving, their partnership stronger than ever, but something else had shifted. They had both come to terms with the fact that their relationship was more than just about work. It was real, it was meaningful, and it was growing. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Emily found herself sitting in the park, the cool evening breeze brushing through her hair. She needed a moment to herself, a chance to reflect on everything that had happened. The weight of it all had been overwhelming at times, but now, sitting there under the fading light of the day, she felt at peace. She thought about how far they had come, from the first time she had met Ryan, unsure of what the future held, to where they were now, building something real and lasting. She thought about their quiet moments together, the way he had supported her through the toughest times, and how they had both let down their walls to build a life together. She hadn't expected this, but she knew now that it was exactly what she needed. As she sat there lost in her thoughts, she felt a presence beside her. Ryan had arrived, his footsteps quiet against the pavement. He sat down beside her, his warmth a comfort as the night grew cooler. "Hey," he said softly, his voice a familiar sound that made her heart skip. "What are you thinking about?" Emily smiled, glancing at him. "Just everything," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "How much has changed? How much we've built? How much we've learned about each other?" Ryan nodded, his hand gently brushing hers. "It's been a wild ride," he said, his voice full of affection. "But I wouldn't want to be doing this with anyone else." Emily turned to face him, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I feel the same way," she replied. "I never thought I'd find something like this. Not just the work, but us." Ryan smiled, his eyes soft and full of warmth. "We've both been through a lot, but I think we've found something worth fighting for." Emily nodded, her eyes glistening in the soft light of the park. "Yeah, we have." She took a deep breath, the weight of the moment settling in her chest. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid of the future. She wasn't afraid of the unknowns. With Ryan by her side, she knew they could face anything. "Ryan," she said, her voice quiet but full of certainty, "I want to keep building this life with you. Together." Ryan's smile widened, and he gently cupped her face in his hands. "We will," he promised. "One step at a time." As the night grew darker, they sat together in silence, their hands intertwined. Emily knew that no matter what came next, they would face it together, and that was all that mattered. The future was uncertain, but with Ryan by her side, she felt ready for whatever came their way. They had built something beautiful, something real, and it was just the beginning.